Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with a bit of Total War Warhammer 2 1v1 gameplay. This time around we are doing High Elves against the Dawi led by TzuDevil. This was one of the games we played, and a bit of mono building here for myself. So we were kind of discussing like the bad matchups and the good matchups for the Dawi, because obviously TzuDevil plays a lot of Dwarfs, and so we were discussing some of the matchups. We were trying to get some of the more fun ones or more challenging ones in there, and so I decided, you know what, for one of the games I'm going to run High Elves, and High Elves, of course, probably the worst matchup for the Dawi, at least in my opinion. Because they can just spam so many great weapons. So for my Lord here, I did bring Alariel. I'm not sure if she's the best way to go. I do personally really like Teclis in this matchup as well. But Alariel does have a bunch of cool heals. She's got the Star of Avalorn, she's got Earthblood, she's got Frost Protection. She also does have an AoE Shieldstone of Isha, Life Bloom, Shield of Safri, and Arcane Conduit. I didn't bring any of her other spells because honestly I figured they weren't really worth it against the Dwarves. She's basically just there to provide a constant stream of support, as well as a little bit of zoning tools in case my opponent brought Gyrocopters. As a further insurance against Gyrocopters, we've got two Bolt Throwers. These guys can also do okay against cannons, though I do believe they lose in a 1v1 against Dwarf Cannon, so do keep that in mind. But I figured, you know what, they're good insurance, and if my opponent sort of just leaves and brings a bunch of infantry, we can still shoot them with our Scatter Shot. For our front line, it is a mix of White Lions and Swordmaster of Hoeth. As you can see, 5 units of White Lions of Krace, 4 Swordmasters. So just going super elite, super wide, and looking to simply rush TzuDevil down. Now, TzuDevil here, he did go with a very wide build, but one that was more focused on melee, interestingly enough. It's not something you see all that often, at least not this sort of mid-tier or lower-tier melee backed by artillery pieces, but for his build, he did decide to run with a Lord, so basically just providing a bit of an anchor, a bit of a holding tool. A Dwarf Lord, you know, he's got 60 melee defense, so even for Swordmasters, he's a tough nut to crack. He does also have the Star Metal Plate, which debuffs melee attack by 9, and he does have Stand Your Ground, so all in all, he's just an absolute beast of a tank, and potentially really tough for me to break through. Front line here is a mix of Dwarf Warriors, Miners, as zoning tools, and then there are a few Longbeards with great weapons in the mix, and these guys, they're not going to do great against, say, Swordmasters. Swordmasters will mulch them, but against something like White Lions of Grace, they can definitely tear through them pretty effectively, or definitely trade pretty evenly. I'm not entirely sure which unit comes out on top in a straight-up fight. I do believe White Lions will, but if there's a bit of support, if the White Lions have already taken some damage, especially from something like Dwarf Warriors or Miners or whatever, they will definitely struggle, and they'll probably lose to the Longbeards. Then there are 4 cannons, so this is probably as insurance against monsters. Obviously, if I'd brought something like, say, a dragon or cavalry like Dragon Princess, or for that matter Alariel, they'll do pretty well if she stands still. But right off the bat, TzuDevil is going to focus on my Eclaw Bolt Thrower here and try to whittle it down. Personally, I do think it might actually be better in this situation to focus out the Swordmasters of Hoeth, but regardless, there are a lot of threatening units here, and with a little bit of micro, I'm actually able to kind of just dodge back and forth if he tries to fire on Alariel, and they're expecting him to shoot at her. I actually was kind of juking back and forth. Now, immediately we're going to lose a gun on our Bolt Thrower crew, which does kind of suck, but what can you do? We are trading fire with the Dwarf Cannons, and we are able to take one of the guns down, which is nice. It's not bad. Doing some scouting here with Alariel, I was trying to sort of figure out, gauge how many troops he had hiding. I figured he might have some Rangers or some units of that nature hiding around, and didn't want to just dive in like a complete moron and get gooned out by some sort of sneaky killy stuff. Regardless, realizing now that there is nothing, there are no Slayers hidden in the bushes here, there's no Rangers or anything of that sort, we're sort of taking Alariel around and looking for an opening to dive down on the artillery and try to shut things down. The Bolt Throwers, in the meantime, are doing a good job here against the cannon, sort of taking them down over time. Certainly, they have lost some models. You can see they're down to 2 and now 1 gun, which kind of sucks, but hey, they're doing some work. And the front lines are now clashing. We can see this tide of Elf on Dwarf, basically a recreation of the War of the Beard here, and of course, a lot of our troops are just doing a great job. The White Lions here positioning out on the flank, looking to get an engage on these Longbeards. And if we look at the overarching view, we can see the Frost Protection coming down, healing these protecting these Swordmasters, protecting these White Lions, and really helping us tear through this front line. A lot of this non-AP infantry, the Dwarf Warriors in particular, are not going to do very much against units with 120 armor, which is really nice. And you can see we're breaking through these Miners, and once that happens, the Elves will be able to pour through and really start shutting my opponent down. Over on the flank, the White Lions are trading really well into the Longbeards at the moment, but if they lose their martial prowess, this situation could potentially get pretty bad, because martial prowess is really what keeps White Lions afloat. If they lose their martial prowess, they're going to lose all the melee defense, and the Longbeards are suddenly going to be in a much better position. Elsewhere on the map, the Bolt Throwers do manage to take down another cannon, and Alariel here is kind of running around, but of course Tzu has a lot of reserves. He does have all these miners. Now, obviously, miners will not do well against Swordmasters, but they're going to be able to slow them down. But fortunately, Alariel, he is able to dive in and sort of disrupt the cannons, take the crews offline, and distract there. In the meantime, the white lines are trying to push forward, but once again, Tzu pushing forward the miners, countercharging, blocking me up, and preventing me from getting on most of the artillery pieces. Not all, but most of them. Here we can see the white lines are slowly but surely beating down the Longbeards. But, like I said before, once that martial prowess goes away, which will happen shortly, this fight will start going much, much worse. Fortunately for me, though, the Swordmasters, largely untouched here, are grinding their way through the line. Miners really not a match for them. There's more miners being pulled here, trying to distract them. You can see the Longbeards actually trading really well into the white lines, despite the support from Alariel that I have been dropping fairly consistently. But elsewhere, the Swordmasters really are the key unit here, and they are slowly but surely just mulching through. The white lines are more of a sort of a distraction and a unit that supplements your front line, gives you that additional width that you really want. But the Swordmasters are the unit that's going to be killing here, and they are doing a great job. You can see Alariel here on this cannon, taking it offline. Over here, the Swordmasters getting a little bogged down. I probably should have sent them after this cannon crew and just force path them there, but they're going to mulch through these miners pretty efficiently. They do have that monstrous 48 melee defense, which just makes them so solid. And we still have a lot of health units, and unfortunately my bolt throwers here completely, one of them still has 2 guns, but one of them completely lost all of his guns, so they're pushing forward. On the periphery, these white lines finally winning out, finally able to grind through the Longbeards. But definitely was a tight fight. It definitely came right down to the wire. Longbeards are a little cheaper than white lines, in fact, so definitely pretty brutal stuff. Over here, the Swordmasters of Hoeth are actually starting to struggle a little bit against the Longbeards, and we can see as that attrition starts setting in, as these guys get very tired, as they start losing their melee defense with the loss of martial prowess, things start going much worse for them. Fortunately, though, we are getting some heals in there. We are getting a bit of Earthblood over here. We got Frost Protection on these guys, and the mob of infantry is just pouring through, swarming through the dwarf lines. There are a few wins here, like these Longbeards. You wouldn't believe it. They actually beat my artillery crew. Like, who would have guessed? But Longbeards, they're beat up by crew. But now these Swordmasters are pulled off the line to come in and deal with them. And, of course, Longbeards are too slow to escape. So, if TzuDevil doesn't stand and fight here, we are going to be able to chop him down with some most cowardly backstabs with these awesome-looking two-handers. And definitely, this is not going to be a great fight for the Longbeards. Swordmasters are just such an elite infantry dicer. They're a unit that beats Black Orcs and in a straight-up fight, even if Black Orcs get Wah, which kind of says a lot about how ridiculous they can be if they get into a fight unscathed or relatively unscathed. At this stage, we are still getting some healing. There's still pocket going on over there, but at this point, it's going to be a Pyrrhic victory for the High Elves. Now, the fight here, I think, demonstrates a lot of the issues that the Dwarves have with High Elves. TzuDevil kind of trying to build, I think, a comp to counter more variety. There's a lot of things High Elves can run here. They can bring monsters, they can bring lots of heavy cav, they can bring, in fact, lots of light cav, which can be a bit of a nuisance. Dealing with lots of light cav, swamping your artillery pieces is also tough for the Dwarves. High Elves can actually bring some decent amounts of shooting. They can go with bolt thrower spam, which means that if you don't bring a lot of cannons, you're going to be in trouble. And so I think TzuDevil was kind of trying to build a comp here to counter a lot of that. And I basically just went with a mono build. I just spammed a bunch of great weapon units, knowing that chances are he wouldn't be able to match me there. Going over sort of the unit breakdown, the white lines in this matchup, great unit in my opinion. They've got 30% missile resist, which is really nice. They're really good for soaking up damage. If your opponent has a bunch of, say, miners with blasting charges, which Tzu wasn't running here, but if they do, then you can charge the white lines in, have them soak up the blasting charges. 30% missile resist will soak that damage up. And then they're still good enough to deal with lower-end dwarf infantry in close quarters. In the meantime, the Swordmasters, they can be used to pick off the elite units, things like hammers, things like Longbeards, Iron Breakers, if your opponent brings those. Not a very common sight in this matchup, I think, but Swordmaster will do great against them. And so all those sorts of units, Swordmasters will do really well. And then the other cool thing about High Elves is that they've got lots of mobility. So Chaos, for example, which is another faction that can go super wide with great weapons. Chaos doesn't have speed. They've only got 28 mobility on most of their troops, so running down Dwarven backlines is actually really difficult for them. For the High Elves, who are all significantly faster than Dwarf infantry, including units like Thunderers, Iron Drakes, all that sort of stuff, Swordmasters can quickly bust the front line and then overrun the back line. Same with the White Lions, so that's really useful. Bolt throws, they didn't get much done here, but hey, you can't win them all there. Obviously, they would have needed something like a gyrocopter, or maybe if my opponent had just brought like 1 or 2 cannons, this would have gone much better. Alariel, she did okay. She was basically just there as a battery for spamming of buffs. As far as Supa's build goes here, I thought it was pretty cool. It was an interesting take on the matchup because it's a really wide infantry or melee heavy build. But the cannons there would give you a lot of stopping power if you're dealing with monsters or cavalry. 4 cannons with this much trash to back them up or protect them, it means that something like a chariot noble play, which is actually very common in this matchup as well, something like a dragon, even dodging, like sure you can dodge, but if you actually try to pull the dragon into the fight, something like cannons will completely shut that down. So from that perspective, I think this build is solid. That said, I do think a little bit of more point defense would have probably been better. Personally, I like to go a little lighter on artillery and bring units like Iron Drakes with Trollhammer torpedoes and then Thunders. I know some of you guys have probably seen some of my recent replays with Dodawi against High Elves. I personally like builds with with even cheaper infantry than this. Just bring a complete trash core of infantry and then going super wide with a lot of shooting, because I find that that's, in my experience, what I have good results with against Dawi. But this build pretty cool, and it actually did win out in a few areas. They were able to sort of obviously completely dominate the artillery fight. Some of the Swordmasters and some of the White Lions, especially the martial prowess, started falling apart. And I think that perhaps a little bit of different focus fire, focusing out the Swordmasters early on, could have made a huge difference, because the Swordmasters were really the key unit for me in this game. None of the other units here are really as important for the overall strategy to work. But regardless, great game to TzuDevil here. There is another game that he is posting on right at the same time that you guys would probably like to check out. It's another 1v1. We did quite a few of these games, so we are still going to be posting another pair of matches tomorrow. TzuDevil's playing his Dawi in all of these. I've just messed around and run around a whole bunch of different factions because we want to have more different showcase matches. Have lots of different variety there. So be sure to check out his channel if you haven't already. As I've been saying for the past few days, I will be leaving a link down below to check that stuff out. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, as usual, don't hesitate to post them. I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.